But these examples are from eitc.irs.gov, which is eitc.irs.gov. Here's our first scenario. These might have changed since the last time I did them, so I might be learning with you. We have a separated spouse. So client comes to you and she wants her taxes done, and she is separated from her spouse, she says. She has a 7-year-old child and she wants to claim earned income credit. And now you have to start asking questions.
When did you and your spouse separate?
When did, yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. What exactly do you mean by separated? Or is it a legal separation or you just stop living together? And then if they are legally separated, then you don't need to know when. Well, you do need to know whether it was during the year last year. But if she's coming to you in March and she just separated, got a legal separation last month in February, then she's still married for last year. So exactly what does that mean? What is her marital status, which would result in her filing status? So yes, are you legally separated? Or if you're not, did you not live with your spouse the last 6 months of the year? So we'll have people, they got, their divorce was finalized in February, but then we have to ask, like, when did you and your husband stop living together? Did you move out? Did he move out? Where did the children go when you separated? If they said, we haven't lived together for almost 2 years, divorce has been going on that whole time, then they lived apart for the last 6 months of the year, and she may be able to claim earned income credit based on that special rule for married filing separately, or she may even qualify as head of household filing status. Also have to ask, where does the child live? And they may start off with what their divorce decree or child support agreement says, or their custody agreement might say. And though that is considered evidence to the IRS, it's not determinative. So if the court paperwork says that the child lives with the mother during the school year and the father during the summer, that's pretty strong evidence that the mother is the custodial parent. But people don't always do what the court tells them to do. So if the facts are that the child lived with the father, even though he was supposed to be living with the mother, the father might be the correct person to claim that child. But you'd have to have some pretty strong evidence of that fact to override the other evidence. That's the divorce decree. So anytime you have a single parent, since there's another parent involved, as a preparer, you should ask questions to determine if there's any chance the other parent can claim that child. And then you would also explain the tiebreaker rules. If the child lived with you more than they lived with the other parent, or vice versa, whichever parent the child lived with more during the year is the correct person to claim that child. Okay, so you've asked these questions, and here are the answers. Are you still married? And she says, yes, I'm still married, but we don't live together. So that means they're going to be either married filing jointly, or married filing separately, or head of household. Do you remember how you can file head of household even though you're still married?
You share with each other
Of the last 6 months of the year. Okay. So you can't live together at all during the last 6 months of the year. There's 2 more. The rules to be considered unmarried for head of household filing purposes.
More than half the cost though.
Okay, you pay more than half the cost of keeping up the home, that's number 2. The qualifying person must be
A relative.
not any relative.
A child. Your child.
Yes, your qualifying person has to be your son or daughter.
Right.
So if it's your brother, sister, niece, or nephew, or grandchild, they don't qualify you for head of household if you're married.
Right.
This slide is a little bit out of date because the rules changed in 2021. These were produced way back in the 2000s. If she's married filing separately, she cannot claim EITC unless her spouse did not live with her anytime during the last 6 months of the year. Okay. All right, so we're going to continue asking questions because we don't know yet. So she's still married, according to the previous slide. So then we ask, as Dan said, when did you and your husband move apart? And she says they haven't lived together since January last year. Okay, so she might be head of household. We still have to figure out whether she actually qualifies as head of household. So we should ask, so she already said that. How long during the year did your child live with you? So she says she lives with her dad every other weekend and 2 weeks in the summer. Otherwise, she lives with me. So that part's clear. Does anybody else live with you? And the reason we ask that is not because that other person might claim the child, but because that other person might be contributing to the upkeep of the home. If it's just her and her kid, and those are only 2 people living in the home, well, who's paying the bills? Not the kid, the parent is. So if there's only one person living in that home, then we don't have to get too detailed for head of household for keeping up the home. Okay. All right, start over. Now we have a different married parent who wants to claim their child, or she says she's separated. And she says, again, I'm still married, but we live apart. So you ask, when did you start living apart? And she says, November. And you say, I'm sorry, you can't claim the earned income credit. Unless you file a joint return.
Well, and
And-
that one that said, what do you tell her? Suggest probably that, see if she could married filing jointly still, and just so that they could both get the best benefit for this year at least.
Yeah.
Otherwise, she'd have to do that.
Yeah, and sometimes, like maybe the spouse that she kicked out doesn't work at all, and you might suggest, well, maybe you can bribe him, give him $2,000 for him to sign your tax return, and you still come out way ahead.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we have an 18-year-old with a 2-year-old child. Okay, so somebody wants to claim the earned income credit. She's 18 years old, and she wants to claim her 2-year-old daughter. And she also lives with her parents.
Yeah, she only made $3,000.
Mm-hmm.
Probably want to ask.
She would be a dependent on her parents' return, right?
Yes, most likely she
Anybody
is.
else can claim her as a dependent,
Yeah.
and is the father gonna be wanting to try and claim the daughter?
Yeah, but if the father doesn't live with the child, then the father's not.
Can't get the
Okay, so it seems like she is going to be her parents' dependent, but we could ask more questions to actually figure that out, because we might ask, how long have you been living with your parents? Maybe she just moved back in with her parents.
Yeah.
She was on her own until July, and then she figured out that she couldn't handle it on her own, making $3,000 a year, so she moved back in with her parents. So in this case, because she could be a qualifying child of someone else, then we kind of have to reverse our lens and try to figure out whether her parents can claim her as dependent, which means you're going to go through all the steps: joint return, age, relationship, residency, and support, but from her parents' point of view. So she's not married, so she's not filing a joint return. Age, she's under 19. Relationship, she is her parents' daughter. Support, she only made $3,000, so that's really not enough to support herself. And so the only question left is residency. So we have to ask, so our best question to ask would be, did you live with your parents all year, or did you recently move in with them, or other questions? So age is met, relationship is met, residency is still a question. So when did you move in with your parents? And she says, I moved in with my parents in November. Well, she did not live with them for more than 6 months of the year, so she is not their dependent, which means she's free to claim her own earned income credit based on her child. But then, well, then we have to figure out whether she can claim her child as a dependent. Where did your child live? Yeah, maybe she moved out, tried to establish her own foothold before having her daughter move in with her, but the child lived with the grandparents the whole time.
She can't claim.
And then, no,
Right.
I've never done that. I was 18 years old. I'm just saying.
Okay. Does she qualify for the earned income credit with no qualifying children?
no,
No. Why?
because the child isn't.
Right. But there's also an earned income credit for people with no qualifying children. Well, that's a good point. If with only $3,000 in income, she might still be her parents' qualifying relative. Because remember, you claim someone as a dependent that does not live with you if you're supporting them. So maybe her parents were trying to help her set up her own apartment to live in, and she couldn't hold down a job. They were supporting her, so she could be her parents' dependent as qualifying relative, which means she wouldn't qualify for earned income credit. But
But it says you have to be 25.
yeah, that's the main thing I was getting at, is she's too young to claim the earned income credit without a qualifying child. Oh, there it is. She's only 18 and she has to be at least 25. Okay. All right, let's try very similar person. Maybe it's her sister and she's also 18 and has her 2-year-old child. And you ask, when did you move in with your parents? And she says, I've always lived with my parents, never moved out. So I can't think of anything else that we would need to know. Yeah. And also she has a tax problem. Okay, so you say you don't qualify for earned income credit because you qualify as your parents' qualifying child. Not only that, they can claim you as a dependent. They can probably claim the grandchild as a dependent because the grandchild is not her qualifying child. The tiebreaker rule does not apply in this case because she's not allowed to claim any dependents. And even if the parents say, no, we don't plan to claim you, we don't want to claim you, she still does not get the earned income credit because the question is, can someone claim you, not does someone claim you. Okay, let's try one more time and then we'll break for the day. She says, I moved home in November last year. It's too hard raising my daughter on my own. So quite similar to the first situation. So she's not her parents' qualifying child. And did your child live with you while you were out? And she says, yeah, my child has always lived with me. And did anybody else live with you? That question is getting down to head of household possibly, and also if it's a different relative. So if it's her older brother that's supporting her, she might be his qualifying child. But nobody else lives with her. It was just her and her kid. And so there's nobody who could claim her as a qualifying child. So looks like you do qualify for the earned income credit.